20 2021 monthly meeting of the Manila CSD. My name is Megan Ryan. I'm the vice president of the board and will be the chairperson for tonight's meeting. First up on the agenda, we'll do a roll call to make sure that we have a quorum. So if you want to, we can go around and state your name and you're here for the record for the board members.
Corey Falk, present.
Dave Janetta, present.
John Broderick, present.
Thank you. We have one other member, Danielle, who may be joining us later in the meeting. So, but we have a quorum, so we'll keep going. Are there any modifications to the agenda that are necessary? Seeing none, we'll keep moving on. Pursuant to AB 361, this meeting of the Manila Community Service District is being held locally. The state regulation, or I'm sorry, virtually, the state regulations regarding virtual meetings changed and require the board to adopt a resolution every 30 days, declaring a local emergency that is persisting, that allows us to continue to use teleconferencing. So that is, so I want to do that first and take a vote on that. This resolution would extend teleconferencing from October 21st through November 20th of 2021. And another resolution will come before us then at the following month as we continue to meet virtually. Does someone want to make a motion for adoption of what is resolution 2021-05?
I'll move to adopt resolution 2125.
Thank you, Sequoia. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. And we'll just take a vote on that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Seeing none, resolution passes unanimously. Thank you. So starting off on our agenda this evening, there were some questions and potential concerns that got brought forward by the community related to signs appearing on 255 that were covered up that seemed to suggest a detour for 101 South. There are some questions that came to the district, also to board members and to CALTRANS regarding what the signs are for. And so to provide more information to the community on why we are seeing those signs, we have a representative from the project manager from CALTRANS here to talk about those signs and why we're seeing them, and any and we'll take public comment and see if there's other items that need to be addressed. Chris, if you have anything to add to that, otherwise we can go over to Jeff.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just kick it off with, we did also get some calls, and I was a little reluctant to put an agenda item, but there's people questioning what's going on with that. So it looks like there's detour signs, and CALTRANS asked to come and make a comment on that and answer any questions related to that. Danielle is showing up, so I'll let her in, and I'll also turn this over to Jeff. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks, Chris. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'll try to make this brief because I know Sequoia shared with me you guys have a pretty full agenda, but I know there was a lot of interest, and so I thought this would be a good opportunity to let everyone know kind of the background behind the signs and the planned detour and whatnot, and have an opportunity to ask any questions. So just to start, my name is Jeff Pimentel. I'm a project manager here for CALTRANS in District 1, Eureka, and I am the project manager on the Jacoby Creek Bridge Replacement Project, which is the detour signs that the community has seen out there related to that project. We recently did a Facebook video update, so I'm not sure if anyone's seen that. We just published that yesterday. And so what I'm going to share now will be much of the same. There had been some thought that the Southbound 101 detour signs were related to our Indianola undercrossing project, which is actually not currently in construction and not planned for construction until likely late summer, early fall of 2022. Those signs that the community has seen are related to our Jacoby Creek bridge replacement on Southbound 101. So if you've traveled southbound on 101 anytime between the beginning of July to today, you'll notice that just south of Arcata, once you get to Jacoby Creek, there's a detour that takes you into the median now. And we have a temporary bridge location in the median there where you kind of wag and go around the old alignment of 101 in that location. That bridge that you're driving on now in that detoured location is actually the final bridge that will be moved into place onto 101 where you previously drove. But in order to do that, and it's called what we call a jack and slide construction method. In order to do that, we need to close the highway on 2 different occasions at nighttime only. And so this will occur, this is actually was planned to occur this month in October, but due to the forecasted weather and also our work window restrictions and the end of the construction season really being upon us here, we unfortunately have to push it until the beginning of July of 2022. So that's when the community can expect these closures to occur. The first closure will occur at night and will be approximately a 5-hour closure. That will be for the contractor to test that they can facilitate movement of the structure. They'll simply move it a few inches and move it back into place just to ensure that goes off without any incidents. And then approximately a week later, assuming everything goes well on that, which is what we expect, there'll be a 10-hour closure, and that will be for the actual final movement of the structure into its place. And so by the morning time on that second closure, the new structure will be in its place and traffic will be routed back on southbound 101. So essentially, public will probably not really experience the effects of these closures since they will be at nighttime only. Trying to think of any other details. Approximately a week in advance of these closures, once we have them scheduled, we will put out portable changeable message signs to alert the public also that this is coming. I'm also committing to doing further updates. Maybe what I can do is communicate through Sequoia or Chris as that gets closer and we have a construction schedule and we know that when that's going to occur, likely sometime late spring, early summer, when we know what the confirmed dates are, and I can come back, either just communicate that to Sequoia or Chris and they can circulate that amongst their distribution list, or I'm happy to attend another board meeting and answer any questions, give an update on that. But I would plan on this occurring about the beginning of July. And like I said, it'll be 2 closures. First will be 5 hours, second will be 10 hours. And that's it. Only other thing I wanted to mention with regards to the Indian Oil Undercrossing project, which we expect to start construction late summer, early fall of 2022. We are not planning any complete closures of 101 in either the north or southbound direction for that project. So I know that was a concern. This is related to that. For that project, we'll be maintaining at least 1 lane in each direction at all times. We will have some single lane closures that occur with that project, but we will be maintaining at least 1 lane each direction and not forcing a detour over to 255 with that project. So with that, that was the update. I just wanted to kind of come and set the record straight for everyone and hopefully ease anyone's concerns that it was a extended detour that was going to be going through, the community that probably most of you frequent and live in. So with that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate the overview. It's very informative. Is there any board members that have any questions for Jeff? I just had a couple of questions. When you say overnight hours, are you referring generally between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. For when the work will occur?
Yeah, so and I'll probably have to bring more details on that. My expectation and what I've heard from our construction staff is that for the shorter 5-hour closure, I believe that will be from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. approximately. And I get that's longer than 5 hours there, but within that window.
Sure.
The other closure, the 10-hour closure, the longer one for the actual move is expected to end at 6 a.m. So I would expect that to start at approximately 8 p.m.
A little earlier. Okay, great. Thank you. And like you said, there'd be portable electronic signs that will be placed along the highway when it gets closer. Should we anticipate that the signs that are currently there now will stay through next summer, or will they be removed?
Yeah, I asked our construction staff that because I haven't actually seen the signs myself and I wasn't sure how many there were, but I asked them yesterday, anticipating this question would come up. So I think ideally it'd be nice to remove those, but there was an expense to the project to put them up. And so I think just, you know, in the interest of the taxpayer that's paying for these projects, it would probably be a waste to remove them. We will, I will be communicating to our construction staff to ensure that they are maintained in terms of covering them so there's no confusion in the community. Even maybe exploring that the coverings they have now maybe are more permanent. So I don't know if anyone has any feedback. Like I said, I have not seen the signs myself. So if any of you have any feedback on that, I'd be definitely open to taking that. But it appears as though we will be keeping them in until July of next year when the movement and detours occur.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just good to know what to expect sometimes. If no other board members have any question, I'll open public comment at this time. If there are any members of the public who wish to comment on this item, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I'll close the public comment and bring it back to the board. We don't need to take an action on this, but unless there's, and see if there's any other questions or clarifications that we need. I appreciate your time this evening, Jeff, and I think coming back before us once we get into next summer construction season would be great to have an update at that time.
Okay, that's great. And I'll, I don't know if I'm able to use the chat, but I'll go ahead and put my contact information in the chat. So if anyone has any questions or issues with any of our projects there in the corridor, generally I'm a project manager for most of our projects in the Eureka-Arcata region. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Jeff. Moving along, we are going to go into the public input or public comments that for items that are not on the agenda. If there are public members who would like to bring items forward to the board for consideration or discussion that are not on tonight's agenda, now would be the time to do that. Are there any public members who have any comments on matters not on the agenda? Please raise your hand.
Hello.
Yes, hello, Dendra. Did you have a comment on something not on the agenda?
Yes, at
All
the
right. Go ahead.
last board meeting, and it's not accurately reflected in the minutes, but I stated that in the minutes that you're going to review today, but I stated that the state requirements for the district's website, which were effective legally on January 2020, that the district's website is out of compliance, and there's numerous areas that it's out of compliance, and especially the ADA accessible. There's supposed to be a link to the state controller's office for salaries. There's, when you first open up the website, you're supposed to be able to see the word agenda, so you can go right to the agenda, not have to go to the board of directors and then, you know, go to the agenda. And there's several other things. And so the district could be sued for that. Just to give the heads up.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak on items not on the agenda? Seeing
I was
none.
just going to offer that I could easily build that website. That wouldn't take much time, and I could do that as a voluntary basis if anyone's interested.
Great, thank you, Farah. Anybody else comments for items not on the agenda? Seeing none, I will close that portion of the meeting, and we'll move on to the business items. Our first business item is the Manila RV Park revitalization and proposal update, and we'll start with Chris for staff report.
Thank you very much. We've been going back and forth with this proposal and this issue for a few months now. We did skip 1 month. We had a special meeting last month that didn't have much of an update for everybody. But I did meet, staff met with Farah again, and we tried to get drill down and to get some numbers for the board and something to act on. And in my staff report, you'll see that I had provided 3 options, and I tried to keep it very basic. And I can answer any questions anybody has from the staff's side of this. You'll see that there was also a letter from some community members regarding the proposal. There's also another proposal that came in. I call it a proposal. It didn't scan very well, but there's a guy who just said that he would do something similar to that. So if anybody has any questions on my staff report, I'll answer those now before I turn it over to Farah for her update.
Were there any board members that had questions for Chris?
Okay, Farah, did you have anything that you wanted to share on screen that I need to kick it over to you?
No, I mean, I did actually make a brief video. I did make that drive folder available to everyone. And so I just wanted to make sure everyone was able to access that. Again, like just spent very little time on a website. The whole idea was to give the concept so that we could understand how a booking engine would work, how you guys could get fiscal reporting very easily, and how everything would operate on an online basis. The budgetary, I know that there would have to be permits if we wanted to expand. I think the idea would be to start off small, win the trust of the community, and repair that reputation that I think needs to be repaired. And then budgeting moving forward. I did revise the budget so that it is 6 months as mentioned in Alicia's letter. So it would be like everything is running, I think, if I'm not mistaken, through May through October. Don't quote me on that. I could be 1 month off on either way, but running on a 6 month. And then I proposed with different occupancy levels based on my experience within the hospitality industry, starting at a low ball at 70 and then going up to 100. Again, touching really briefly, this is my last item on the marketing services. I believe, like Chris mentioned, you can, well, actually I went there to take measurements the other day, and someone had cut down the chains and everything. And so I think there's a little bit of issues with that. I was just measuring some sites. But as Chris mentioned, like you could just like cut the chains and it would be full right away. But the whole marketing is that we want to target a specific demographic, a specific clientele that's going to contribute to the community. And so that's something that I just briefly touched on in the proposal as an optional option. For me, it's not financially motivated, but I think in order for it to make the vision come together and for us to get the right clientele in there, it is important to market to those individuals. And that's pretty much it. If anybody has any questions about anything in that drive, and I also submitted photos of like just my rig so that you guys know that it wouldn't be an eyesore to the community. I garden and try to make everything really cute, and want to do the same thing with the RV park as well. But yeah, open to any questions if you have any at this time.
I'd love to jump in, and I apologize if I just misunderstand something that's already been stated very clearly, but just to try and, I really appreciate all the information you sent us, Farah. It was great to see all the details, and I'm just trying to understand if I understand correctly, it's an exchange of, in exchange for living there, there would be a certain amount of hours that you would be working. And then when it comes to the actual profits from the park, or I was wondering how that works in terms of like what your incentive is to make it as profitable as possible, et cetera. And if that's not appropriate question, you guys can let me know, but that's what I was curious about.
Well, I mean, all profits would be directly routed to whatever bank account would be set up by the district. I'm not sure how, but within the property management system, it would go directly. My incentive to make it successful is that's just my personality type. I want it to be the center of the community. As I mentioned to Chris many times, I didn't submit this proposal out of desperation because I needed a place to stay or I needed, free rent or anything. I genuinely want to be a part of the community, and I want to make it an awesome place. And that is my incentive. I've never worked so hard to try to prove that I'm like, just have good intentions here. And that's what I want to do, good things. And so I don't know how much more I can get that across. That's my goal. I want to make it something awesome for the community. It has so much potential and I see it. And that's how I'd be motivated as it grows. Like say we do permits and say we start to scale. I think we could revisit that conversation, right? Because then it would be actually a little bit more work. And it would be something I think we could revisit in following years if we did want to make it like a 6 or 8 site campground. But as a 2-site campground, I mean, it's pretty manageable, and it would just be out of the goodness of my heart at this point. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Were there any other members of the board that have any questions for Farah or Chris at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to open the public comment. If there are members of in the public who would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. Dendra, would you like to speak on this item?
Yes.
Great. Go ahead.
I had some conversations with Chris the other day in the office, but one is I'm not sure how much of the permit information that Farah's gotten, because there's just currently 3 RV sites and the caretaker's site was officially not underneath that little pavilion thing that Maggie had there. And so just to make sure that she knows that there were 3 RV sites, and then I think there were either 2 or 3 tent sites and the caretaker site, but there's more permits than what are in the packet. So that's one thing. And if the board doesn't, like, depending on what you guys decide, I'd like to make some input. So I don't know what you're gonna, which option you're gonna do. So because I think you should have, I'll just say it now, I feel that the board, no matter what you do, you should appoint some kind of ad hoc committee or do a park and recreation commission, something to provide. So there's a way for the community to provide input to the board as there was in the past. Like there was a 7-member commission and they would just make recommendations to the board. They didn't direct the board to do anything. So just so there's more community knowledge about what's happening.
Thank you, Dendra.
If I could just, I don't know if it's too late for me to jump in again with a question, Meg.
If you want to wait, I'd prefer if you wait till after public comment.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. And I see a hand raised, Carlson. Would you like to speak on the RV park proposal?
I think he's having trouble unmuting. Let me try to.
I think it's *6 to unmute. Here you go.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry.
No problem.
This is a new interface for me here, but A couple questions and a couple comments. I haven't been part of the conversation, so forgive me for coming late to the table with questions. And there was a lot of information in the board packet. I appreciate the information, and I'm excited about the idea. A couple questions include, it appears to be a seasonal idea. Would the caretakers, hold on a second. Can you guys go out for a little bit? Would the caretakers habitation also be seasonal? One question. Are there also eviction issues or strategies that are outlined in the policies and the kind of the setup, or is that something that needs to be considered? Enforcement of the rules. I think it's important to anticipate what problems might come up and what the next steps are if things don't go as you anticipate. And the connection, the sewage connection, I think there's a couple scenarios in there where it appeared that there were 40-foot RV spots. And are there full connection setups, and what sort of connection fees, or how does that relate to, I don't know, it seems like there's a lot of moving parts to that. So, granted, I didn't review the full staff report on this, so forgive me, but just a couple questions there. Thanks so much. That's it.
Great, thank you very much. Were there any other members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Please raise your hand.
Yes, I would like to speak on this item.
Great, go ahead. Caller ending, and I think it's 3733.
Great. Well, I'm coming in late to the conversation as well. I was mostly here to hear Jeff's presentation tonight, but I am interested in the park and the campground, and I know that it sounds like Referral wants to target a certain demographic, but even though you target a certain demographic, I don't think that there are any rules that allow you to turn. I'm just wondering if you are able to turn away a different demographic, the sort of demographic that we have had at that campground, at that RV area in the past, which is, a little more desperate people who are, kind of moving around, who only have an RV to live in and are kind of moving around from place to place rather than a happy middle class, family on vacation. So I really don't know whether you are voting on this tonight, and or whether there's more time for thought. I'm not sure exactly what you would be voting on. I did look at the packet and try to get as much information as I could. Thanks a lot. That's the end of my comment.
Great, thank you very much. Were there any other members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, I will close the public comment and bring it back to the board. I guess bring it back first to Chris. Are there items from the comments you'd like to address?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, I want to circle completely back around just because we are in a weird footing in how we started this whole thing. And to recall an early staff report I brought to the board was a lot of things were colliding at the same time. Maggie had an accident. We had this position melded with the caretaker and the RV host were kind of one thing. So there's a lot of confusion and, like a caller said, a lot of moving parts. But I had asked the board at the time whether they wanted to generally support opening an RV park, and then we would go from there. And Farah had this wonderful proposal and got it in front of that answer, I believe. So that's where we're now asking ourselves, do we want to open a park generally speaking? And if we do, then we have a proposal right in front of us to deal with that. So that's why there was a lot of frayed parts of this coming in somewhat frantically. And it was hard for staff and Farah to sit down and get some simple questions answered. So some of the real big low hanging fruit things are, it's about a half of the year open. She does want to live there. There's 3 spaces available for rent without a permit modification. There is no tent camping. I'll stop kind of right there. So there was a lot of things that we didn't really know we were even going to have to deal with. So what we had gleaned from the proposal, and if Farrah can correct me if I'm wrong on any of these figures, but we're looking at around $5,000 to $15,000 in startup costs and then around 10 grand annually. And at income at that occupancy. And we did clear up that we would get direct deposit of all the income for all the tenancy there. There is no clean outs for the public in the septic system. That's just for the host at this time. We'd have to do some other work there to make it a full hookup for campers. There was something else I forgot.
Yeah, to answer caller with the last digit 3733, there are rules and regulations in which you can turn away RVs that don't fit certain conditions under 10 years. They must have valid insurance.
I'm like, where did you? Oh, on the front, well.
There's background noise. I'm not sure if somebody's asking a question, but I took a lot of these rules and regulations from California state parks. And just kind of reworded them so that they can fit us. So pretty much the way they're written, I can turn away anybody that doesn't fit the bill. Yeah.
Thank you. Were there other questions that board members had? And Chris, or go ahead. I see Dave, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, real quick, I guess. I mean, I did read through all of this, and I did want to on that sheet of questions. I don't know if this is the right time. Somebody asked for some reason specifically if I knew Farrah prior to this. I've never met Farrah outside of these digital virtual meetings. So thank you for that question. Yeah, I mean, I guess if Chris could maybe go into a little bit more detail regarding his staff recommendation, and then number 1, which is keeping it closed, and then also seeing as it's like the end of the camping season. I mean, I personally liked Dendra's comment about maybe making a committee, or I think Farrah's done a ton of work. I don't want her to have to do anything else, but if there, I guess the staff recommendation is closing the door. I guess it doesn't, if there's not a reason to close the door on this completely, I guess I probably wouldn't be in favor of that. Or I would be in favor of keeping the door open if possible.
Yeah, I'll be more than happy to elaborate a bit. And a lot of this is because the door was it was closed because of COVID, the park itself. And that alone introduces some problems right now that I pointed out with eviction moratoriums and things like that. We're really lucky we don't have anybody in there today that refused to leave. And I'm not really sure how that's going to unfold when those are lifted by the governor or not, and how those extensions are going to play out in public spaces in particular. You're seeing that the law enforcement isn't doing much there at all. But I don't want to be a fearmonger tonight, which I already put up there as number 2. I want to back up to number 1. And we spent $10,000 of the ratepayer money to ask the question of what they want to do with the park. And I think that ignoring what they said is a little bit, it's kind of risky, I think. I just wanted to, and that's basically why I'm recommending against this in a big way, is that we were told that aside from the history of what staff has experienced with it for the last 15 years, that the community would rather repurpose that for some upcoming grant efforts. If we went with her proposal to try this out and give it a shot, I don't know how much blowback we would get from the community thinking we're going to spend any grant money on it, or if the board wishes to do just that. One of the drawings for the grant program that will be presented next month over the next 60 days has a dog park right in the middle of the RV park. So that would be pulled from the grant or moved elsewhere. And again, I don't want to get in the way of this. I just want to, my job is to make sure that the board has enough information to make a rational decision or a reasonable decision on this. And so that's why we provided 3 options. And one of them is also to go out for RFP and ask in advance what does the district need out of the host. So I think that Farrah's wonderful presentation, I have to say, and I told her, I think the optimism is very contagious and it's refreshing, and it's fun that somebody has this much interest in our park. And I'm a property owner here too, and I have kids and I love this area and I'm very excited about it as a staff member. I just want to be very careful how the board proceeds in kind of short circuiting a lot of process that we've already had in momentum towards this. How do we leave the door open for this? I'm not really sure. I'm not saying lock the door closed. I think that there's a lot of things colliding right now with the grant, what we want to do with that area, and we don't want to miss an opportunity to have such a wonderful opportunity to make it better. But we also want to avoid having to get somebody's hopes up and move into our public space and then have to reconsider it if it doesn't work out. So that's kind of where I step back and let the board make those decisions. And I'll try to elaborate more on any of the points that I brought up, but that's kind of all I had to say on it.
Thank you, Chris. Sequoia or John, have any comments or deliberation on this? Dave?
So just one quick follow-up, Chris, can you talk about number one, where you, I don't know the details of the outreach. I mean, is this anecdotal or is this like a scientific or slash, do we poll every member of the community or how did that work?
There's definitely some sampling error in our, hold on one second here. Our CAA was hired to do outreach for the park for a competitive grant that we're not sure we have yet. We went back through it to look for what people said about the RV park, and it was the typical comments that you're already hearing. Really, it was bad news in the past. How let's repurpose it essentially. So there wasn't a lot of, there's no quantifiable data there. No, and we're going to go back through surveys for another grant effort to bring projects to the board, and there might be some quantifiable data that I overlooked in there. But I just brought the basics to you guys. That one of the items from that survey was that to close the RV park permanently. They didn't. Whoever said that didn't want it to happen at all.
I would love to jump in if possible.
Yeah.
So as I understood, when they were conducting the surveys about the grant for park improvements, the RV park was closed because of COVID, but it had not been officially shut down. We hadn't voted on that. And any sort of designs or things that community members had shouldn't have been seriously considered if they were contingent on it closing, because that decision hadn't been made. Is that correct? Do I have that right, Chris?
I think I know what you're saying, that maybe since COVID had the RV closed, they were predisposed to perhaps believing it should remain closed.
Well, I just think because you, as if I understand correctly, you were saying that these renovations to the park based on the grant were, community members were thinking that we could use that space for other things, but that would already have been contingent upon closing the park, which wasn't a permanently closed thing. Maggie was still living there.
Correct. Yes.
And, so to me, I don't feel like it's a violation of the public's interest to maintain that space as a park when that was what was the trajectory it would have been on, untampered with, aside from the pandemic. I also will say that when we did first bring that topic up, and I do remember Jan Bramlett was expressing that there had been a lot of meetings where people complained about the RV park and whatnot. I went and did some door knocking myself at that time. And, I only contacted, I think, 9 residents in that general area, but I did have conversations, and I have the actual numbers, but I believe it was 8 out of the 9 people I was there said that they didn't have any problem with it. And 4 of them actually liked the idea of an RV park staying there. One of them was against it. The others were neutral, but it wasn't a consensus. I did have someone say that the person who was very opposed to it over the years was someone who had passed away in the last couple of years. I haven't verified that, so this is not, I'm not trying to present scientific data here, but I'm just saying that my impression from my experience in that area was actually not nearly as negative as what I had been expecting. So I do think that it's a very big opportunity to have someone with the motivation. And I also think that we've been discussing what do we do about this park in terms of having someone there for security reasons. It seems like almost a general consensus that people like the idea of someone being on those grounds 24/7 to maintain security. That has an intrinsic value to the community. And so to me, that is something that we would have to sort out, pay security, whatever it is, to accomplish that ends. And so if we can include that with this package, to me, it seems like a big win-win for the community. So I just wanted to express those views on this, and definitely think it's a great thing to be having a conversation about.
Thank you, Sequoia. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm kind of, it feels like we've been strictly thinking of what we can do to maintain security or a presence on the park as only in the RV park condition where I believe the gentleman that gave us a letter, Daryl, he was thinking of maybe opening it up to an on-site maintenance worker instead of an RV or park I'm manager, I guess. And I think we might want to look at different options since we have this time where the park is shut down. Not permanently, but we can are out there and decide where we want to go. And it feels like this has sort of just been pressed by the presentations given to us. This issue, I should say, has been pressed by the presentations given to us. And we might want to just open it up because I think there are more community members who have other ideas and options that could get submitted to us. And we have the time to consider those as well. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I think, I do agree with Chris in the sense that the optimism about what the park could be is exciting. I do think that the Manila Park could be used, could have more use out of it to benefit our community members. I appreciate the work that Farah has put into this proposal. And I think that, I do agree with the idea of having more public involvement, also to kind of chasing this out, what it looks like a little bit more. I think it's a start of a great business plan. The details aren't all there. At 6 months, there's a long-term, how would we support this long-term is still unclear to me. And the impact financially and otherwise to the district still remains unclear to me. It's a lot of money, but I'm not aware that we have a lot of money to fund this with what we have right now. And so that could be, Chris could maybe comment on that. I think that, with the zoning of the park and what we're able to do with the park, that by deciding to perhaps take more time to dive into this more and see what the options are, doesn't preclude the district or other contractors say who want to use the park to facilitate activities, that those options don't go away if we don't go this direction tonight. And so I guess for myself, I see it as that there are opportunities in the future to develop, whether to keep the RP park, leave it, do more events, and just maybe get more detailed on what that looks like and what's the cost to the district. Also too, from the public comments that we've received regarding the proposal, many of them have been against keeping the park open. So I wanted to voice that. I've seen the comments from the public and appreciate your concerns.
I'd love to jump in again, if that's okay.
No.
Just in response to what both you and John were saying, I do agree that we do need to maximize involvement from the public. Of course, that's the most important thing, is to make sure no one feels like something's going on behind closed doors, and to weigh people's opinions. But I do disagree with the notion of, well, we can take our time and, always revisit this. I know there was a really successful business person that I was, I think, watching their masterclass or something, and this is obviously anecdotal, but they were saying, look, if you want to be successful, it's not about what you invest in terms of physical assets, it's the people you invest in. So if you have someone that's showing an initiative and has a vision, then I think that is extremely the most valuable thing. Just saying, if it's the concept of an RV park, that is something that would be more of a debated thing. But when you have the right person for the job, or someone that you are starting to build some sort of faith in based on the efforts they're putting in and the energy they're bringing to the table initially, to me, that's like, okay, take advantage of opportunities that arise and explore them to their maximum extent, and don't just do what's necessarily the most convenient thing at that time, because I think this is a big opportunity to explore. But I also agree that it should be done in a very transparent way. But with the track record and the work that FAIR has already done, this isn't supposed to be a liability for Manila. This is supposed to be a big asset. This is something that is an investment that leads to more money for the district. And it looks like even if the projections are quite a bit off, it would at the very least break even, and could very well become a much a very successful thing in terms of actually bringing finances. So I definitely don't like to pass up opportunities, and I don't like to pass up people who have initiative. So that's just my opinion on the matter.
Thank you, Sequoia. I appreciate it. I think the board would have the ability to decide. I agree that sometimes you move on from things and then they get lost, and 2 years later you're talking about them again. That definitely happens. And I think the board could decide, depending on which option we go with this evening, that the item come back before us. And we can provide Chris that direction and specifically what we would want the continuing conversation to look like, to help at least address the concern of not capturing the momentum or staying with it. So that would be an option that we could, or that would be something to add to a motion. So I think that
can Chris address your financial question actually? In terms of where if we, and again, that's something maybe that's part of our discussion if we bring it back up, but where the initial startup funds are coming from.
Yeah, I think once we crack this door open a little bit, the flood comes in with it. So if we have, let's say we go with the proposal, or at least open it up and let's give it a shot. $5,000 to $15,000 is not something that I'm gonna blink at to advise the board of. In fact, if we wanted to throw grant funds at the park itself, we would have some opportunity to do that well. It's all about how do we find a defensible position to do that. So I don't think what you're seeing tonight has any big adverse fiscal implications.
And Chris, sorry, just to jump in there, you were mentioning that there was like a general fund where there would be just for those general improvements of gravel and things like that. And then once we made a little bit of profit, we could look for maybe more extensive improvements, such as installing full hookups to those closer sites that are already closer to the septic. which I think would be of minimal cost, and we would see a good ROI or a return on investment.
Yeah, I think that adding full hookups, I think, is a little bit of a different conversation. If we were, because I'm backing up again, like if we're going to open this at all, then it doesn't seem like money's too big of a deal to get at least your proposal implemented at the $5,000 to $15,000 range, to get gravel and electrical inspections and things just kind of squared up and tidied up, and a fence, some security and lighting, things like that really isn't too expensive for us. And if we can bring in $10,000, say in the first or second year, we're really it's going to be a wash, I guess, because the park never lost money on the RV, but it never really made money. It was almost really a break even, depending on what the utilities were costing. And if we had, I don't want to go too far back into the past, but let's just say that I'm pretty confident if we threw $5,000 or $10,000 at it to get some basics going, we're not going to lose our shirt in the first 24 months of this. Notwithstanding that there's some questions about seasonal openings and how long we'll be open. And I know you said something like the first year would be different than the second, and the costs per night, things like that. So a capital investment, it's not gonna be too much of an impact to the general fund.
I think that kind of reiterates what I was trying to express, is if the way the park was run historically, which was very not tech savvy and not up with the times and marketing and all of those things, if I understand it correctly. And I have a lot of respect for Maggie, but I did, I did correspond with her a bit, and it sounded like it wasn't a very sophisticated operation. And if we were breaking even under those circumstances, I see a huge potential. We've got a Cal Poly happening at HSU. We're got the fish farm down the road coming in. We've got the Wi-Fi. Like, Humboldt is moving in a direction where money's going to start coming here. It's a place where people can escape from wildfires. I think there's going to be money coming this direction. So I don't see it being a financial liability for the district.
Right up.
And effort to keep the meeting going. We have a lot of items on the agenda. As you know, there are 3 options that Chris has put before the board. So if somebody would like to make a motion on selecting one of those options, we can take a vote and see where it goes from there, unless there are additional deliberation or questions on this item.
I would like to move to accept the proposal. I believe that was option 1, if I understood, have that correct. Can't really see the small screen. I'd like to move forward with that.
Okay, great. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Dave. And why don't we go through and do a roll call vote? The vote would be on to select the board option number 1, to the board to direct staff to draft a contract accommodating some of the provisions in the proposal. So we could do a roll call vote on this. Sequoia, a yay or a yes or no?
Yay.
Okay, thank you. Dave?
Yay.
John?
Yay.
Megan? No. Motion passes 3-1. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Moving along to the next item on the agenda is Humboldt County Planning Referral for the Humboldt Bay Company LLC commercial cannabis permit. And I'll start with Chris for staff report.
Okay, that feels weird jumping right into this. We've got a referral from the county. We normally, these are pretty straightforward for like somebody building a house, and we haven't been bringing them to the board unless they're pretty significant. This one did leap out. It's a pretty big one, and it can affect our contract for our wholesale water and a little bit of an impact on our sewer system. I did talk with Angie, who's with us tonight to represent the the applicant. And we essentially have come up with, I wrote some draft conditions for approval for the sewer system. They're a little harsh, and I wanted to back them up a little and bring them back a little lighter, because there's going to be literally no impact on our system other than what the mill had initially for restrooms. So we're not concerned with any discharge of cannabis products, byproducts, or anything like that into the system. The bigger question that still has to be answered, that we're going to meet with Humboldt Bay later, is the mechanics of opening up our contract. Should we exceed our peak rate allocation, which is the amount of money we spend to play in the water with the rest of the big munis like Eureka and Arcata, et cetera. Today, where we're at is the unit of measure is million gallons per day, and it's 0.15. And today's update on the use from the cannabis project would be 0.03. We exceed our peak rate a couple times a year during the summer. And if they do actually use 0.03 million gallons, we would probably exceed it several times a month. But as John Friedenbach, the general manager of Humboldt Bay, said, let's not preemptively open up our contract and start costing ourselves a lot of money. Let's wait and actually see the usage, because they might not necessarily use it. They have some other contingencies in their operational plan to use rainwater and recycling their own water. So it's become a really almost a non-issue for the district, and it's going to become more of a how do we set up living unit equivalents to build them appropriately. So with that, unless you had any questions for me, I'll turn it over back to the board if they wanted to address the applicant.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions for Chris at this time? From the board members? If there are none, what I will do is open the public comment, and then I will ask the agent to, and Dave will get right back to you. If there are board member questions for Chris right now, would be the time, and then I will open public comment to take public comment on the item, and I'll ask that the agent speak last to address any public comments that might come up during that time. But going back to you, Dave, did you have a question for Chris?
No, not at this time.
Oh, okay. Great, thank you. With that, I'll go to public comment. Are there any members of the public who are here to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll go to the agent for the project, Angie. And if you would like to address us, now would be the time.
Yep. Hi, this is Angie Dodd with North Point Consulting. I'm one of the agents on the project. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yep. Thank you for letting me letting me speak. I think Chris got everything where the project is right now. There's not much more for me to add. I mean, details that the applicant has provided us is that they're proposing indoor cultivation in greenhouses, processing, manufacturing, and distribution. The cultivation would be a closed loop system, so no off water to your wastewater treatment system. The manufacturing would also be a closed loop system with no water to the wastewater to your wastewater system. The only wastewater would be from employees, restrooms, and showers potentially if they're on site, hand washing. Drinking water, we sent Chris an estimate of the drinking water, or sorry, not drinking water, irrigation water usage. They plan on using about half, I think it's 50% recycled water through dehumidifiers. That's a process I'm not as familiar with. I'm learning about it now, but it was explained to me that indoor cannabis cultivation can get quite a bit of their water through recirculation due to dehumidification. So those are some of the details that I thought would be important to you and your board. So if you guys have any questions for me, I'll do my best to answer them.
Great, thank you, Angie. Are there members of the board that have questions for Angie? Go ahead, Dave.
I'm just a little bit unclear. So all we're really talking about, I mean, so at what stage is the project? Is it already generally permitted? We're just talking about this sort of minimal, as Chris put it, impact to our sewage system, right? Like nothing else. Is that correct?
Yeah, what normally would happen is the county wants to make sure that all the agencies cover any requirements they would have for something during their permitting process. And our interest in this really is begins and ends at the water and wastewater. And it's not going to have any further impact. In fact, it's probably less of an impact than the mill used to have. And since the mill left, it created a 25% hole in our budget, and that enabled us to open up our contract for wholesale water. So this is kind of also opening up our ability to open that again and go back the other direction. So that's basically the simplest way I could put it.
This is Angie with North Point again, if I can speak for a moment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the project is just in the referral process. The application was submitted in September. So right now the county has routed the project application materials to the various agencies for referral comments. Once the county sees referral comments, the applicant will address those referral comments and it will go into the next phase. So this is the very beginning of the application process.
Were there any other Carlson, I see you have your hand raised. Would you like to have a comment on this project?
Yeah, thanks for opening it up to public
Sure.
again.
I haven't closed it yet, so you're
Okay, I'm trying to keep up here.
go ahead. No problem.
I see that the build out could include up to 130 employees working, it seems, at one time, or actually 163 employees. And it may not be relevant. I'm not sure the scope of what the MCSD would include, but is traffic an impact that this MCSD could make a comment on? And I realize it's largely equivalent to the mill before, but the mill's been closed for a while, and 163 trips one way per day, or 160 cars in our community, once again, can make a change in our community that may need to be considered. And what does that mean for us in this small community? I know that there's some kayakers, or there's a small boat launch, and I'm not sure if that's part of the property that is associated with this development, but it would be a shame to lose access to that slough and those recreational uses in addition to the traffic impact. So I'm not sure if the board has any thoughts about that, but it's one concern that I have. Thanks.
Thank you. And Chris, did you want to respond?
Yeah, briefly, not necessarily on the traffic, to Mario, but my understanding, and I could be wrong, is that the conditions of permitting with the Harbor District, who has jurisdiction in the area of the kayak, my understanding is they're going to do some improvements for that condition. So that's actually going to be probably a bit better than we have it today.
Thank you. And I think to respond to the traffic concerns about traffic, this is a referral to the service district for wastewater and water. So that's the purview of our decision tonight. Welcome any comments on the project, but we will not be deciding or evaluating traffic and the traffic counts, and that'll be left to the Planning Commission at the time that moves forward to the Planning Commission.
This is Angie with North Point. I'm happy to respond if the board would like me to on some details regarding both traffic and the kayak launch, if the board would like me to.
Sure.
Yeah, so a traffic study was done by WTrans, and it does a traffic analysis based on trip generations at the multiple ways of entering the site from Eureka, from Arcata, and various locations. And it didn't show a significant impact. The traffic study did propose some minor changes to striping and lane designation to widen. I think I haven't looked at the traffic study in the last couple of weeks, but I think it's to lengthen one of the, like, as you enter the highway from the site. So a traffic study was done, and the public will have the opportunity to review that. The project is not located on the side of the property that is within the coastal zone or within the state jurisdiction of the coastal zone. It's on the side at the kind of more of the upland side, local jurisdiction of the coastal zone. So it's away from that kayak launch. It's the property owner's intent to keep the kayak launch, and they would they're working with the county and the community to figure out the best way to address that and improve that location for potential parking and also future public use. That's it.
Great, thank you. Did anyone else have any additional questions for Angie? I had a few questions, and you may or may not have the answers. Well, one, is there a landscape plan for the project?
If
Or will there be?
There will be a landscape plan. They did hire an architect to do renderings of what the site would potentially look like, visuals from 255, and also some pretty creative and interesting ways to construct the buildings. So yes, there is landscaping. They're hoping to improve the looks of the site, and yes, and those are also in the application documents.
Thank you. Yeah, I saw that. It was specifically curious for LID measures to be built into the landscaping, that, you know, there's an opportunity there perhaps to decrease the impact.
I think so. Yep.
On the CSD facilities. So with, you know, it sounds to me that there is some using the humidity in the rooms and some water recycling and rainwater catchment. The operations plan that I was looking at really spoke to 10,000, or I'm sorry, 100,000 gallons of water storage. So perhaps there's been the water irrigation plan may be updated more than what we're seeing.
Yeah, so they did offer, you know, 100,000 gallons of rainwater catchment. The applicants are willing to work with the district on creative methods for the amount of water, you know, how much of the water is pumped, and, you know, there is room there for more storage if needed. So we did put out 100,000 gallons of rainwater catchment. There is definitely room on that site for more if needed.
Okay, yeah. You know, yeah, I know there's always a struggle there between cost and how do you store larger volumes of water. And I would be curious just on the full potential of the catchment that could occur on the site. I saw in the packet that there's a map related to sea level rise, and Chris, I don't know if you took a look at that and if there's any impact to the district facilities based on that projection for long-term consideration.
Not that
That
isn't,
you're aware of?
not that isn't already addressed in other levels of the community.
Okay, great. It sounds like that it's been worked out that there won't be any, you know, discharge into the wastewater system of anything that's not domestic. Is there a way of monitoring that or providing evidence that that occurs? Or is, you know, has the district handled something like that in the past?
We've never monitored SPIs discharge into the system because it was strictly for their restrooms, and everything else went into a separator on site. I think the only way we would really be able to detect anything not physically being there would be to like see an increase in our characteristics that we measure at the treatment. And I guess at that point we'd react.
Okay. Thank you. I think that are the questions that I have for now. So are there any additional public comments on this project? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment, and we're into deliberations. I think the, you know, it's the purpose of the item, I think, is to provide comments on, or, you know, on the project, on how the district would like to respond to the referral request. But it also seems to me that we're missing a piece of this in that the water, being able, the district's ability to provide the water is unclear at this time.
Yeah, let me clarify that a bit. We have the ability to provide it, and what'll happen in my estimation is that we return the referral with our minimum permit conditions. But I don't think we're gonna have a problem actually providing the water now that I've talked to Humboldt Bay, and what it'll trigger something offline from the permitting process. And it'll be between us and our supplier via contract amendment. And he said that that'll be opened up next year regardless, for us to do an adjustment anyway. So everything's kind of falling into place with this rather simply.
Should the amendment not be approved or something fall through with the amendment, or I guess I would suggest that the amendment would need to be signed prior to cultivation occurring, or how would that look? I mean, I guess I don't know operationally how that works for the applicant either.
Oh, I'm sorry. I would take the application completely off the table, as if, say, we had a hotel or tremendous growth or huge leaks over the course of a few years. It would trigger a contract revision at some point that we're simply going over our allotment, which we already do hit a little bit every summer. So we don't want to actually change our contract preemptively because we think they're going to use this water. John Friedenbach advised me to let's wait and see if they actually hit that. And then we can open up the contract to keep the heartburn down to a minimum to the other municipalities who will see that we're using that amount in their monthly reports to the municipalities. I think that I think I answered your question. Our contract revision really doesn't have anything to do with this permit, other than what this actual business might use enough to trigger that change. I hope that makes sense. It's a little bit complicated because we weren't planning on doing any changes to our contract, but this might compel us to do it next year after they get permitted and after they're in operation. If whatever permit conditions are applied by Humboldt Bay, I'm not aware of yet, but if the business doesn't use enough water to trigger it, it's kind of a moot point for us to open up the contract.
Yeah, I think that provides some clarity, and I think, you know, what I'm looking for more is some security that the residential needs to come first and followed by this project.
Oh, okay. So what that'll look like is, say they use about what they're saying they're going to use. We're going to put a little bit of a pad in that, and you'll see that in my report here where the PRA is a bit cranked up. And then we'll charge the new business a commercial rate that will be defensible with the living unit equivalents. I kind of glossed past that earlier, but we'll take the amount of employees and arrive at a defensible figure that will make sense to charge them a monthly rate, so that it has to be transparent and it has to be neutral effect to the ratepayers, and that's what we will strive for.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think at least that'd be one of
I
my
left the gate open for the planning department
that would be one of my comments, that at the
because I thought that's what you were talking about.
should there be an increase in our allotment that we need as a district, that the additional cost doesn't fall on the ratepayers, and that that doesn't in any way diminish the availability of water for the residents. Did anyone else have any other comments or questions for Chris on this item? Seeing none, did you need, is there an action? Do you want us to, it seems to me the response is not quite complete because of the water part of it. So did you need an action from us?
No, I don't need any action this evening. If they need to act a little quicker than us, then I'll call for a special meeting to approve our response. But I think we're going to have a pretty simple reply that I'll run by the board for November, unless something else happens in the meantime.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Sounds good to me. If that, did any board members, do you want to take a vote on that to continue the item and bring it back next month when we have all the information on the water and the proposed response?
I'll move this to next month when we have the more info.
Great, thank you, John.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Sequoia. And all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no or nay. All right, great. Thanks. Motion passes unanimously to bring this back for next month with the language for the referral response. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. The next business item we have is, I think, regarding the appointment of alternatives for the committees that we have seats on as the service district. And so I will turn that over to Chris.
Thank you. I'm going to stop trying to blow through this giant proposal and I'll just leave what's on the screen like that. Generally speaking, we have 2 outside agency committees, and Megan volunteered for Humboldt Bay and Danielle Muniz is on REDEC. And we're not sure, we lost our alternates when Jan resigned. So what we want to do is get those alternates in place this evening. It shouldn't take but a minute because we had somebody miss the REDEC meeting. I filled in for that and I can report on that a little bit later. It's kind of a double action thing there, but that's what we're looking at tonight, is to find somebody who's willing to back up when somebody's absent on those 2. And briefly, the Humboldt Bay Water District appointee, they're supposed to meet once a year, and it's for the Water Task Force, and it's dealing with water rights and really big picture items at the elected official level. And they haven't met in many years, but they expect to meet about annually. So that's about the commitment with that.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions for Chris regarding this item? Seeing none, I will open it to public comment and see if there's any members of the public who would like to talk about this item. Seeing none, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the board, and ask if there's any volunteers for the alternates on either of these committees. Dave, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I'll do what did Chris call it? REDEC for I'll be the Danielle's alternate. Let me actually, when does it meet? It's is it monthly? Should make sure that I can.
Yeah, it meets monthly. I don't have an agenda in front of me and I forgot what night it is. I thought we would have somebody to answer that.
I mean, I should, generally speaking, I should be able to make it. So
last month, I think it was a Monday. So I'm not sure if it's typically Mondays, but I think the last meeting was on a Monday evening. And that's the Redwood Region Economic Development Commission.
Yeah, Dave, I could find out and send that to you. And it is a backup position. So I'm
it should be fine. Whatever.
Okay.
It should be okay. But yeah, I'll volunteer for that.
All right, great. Thank you, Dave. And anyone want to be the alternate on the water district for the water district seat?
I could do that.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. All right. Well, I think we got that item solved. Thank you all very much. I think for what it's worth, we'll take a vote on electing or having Dave be the alternate for REDEC and John being the alternate for the Water Task Force. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Moving on, the next item is a resolution 2103, a reimbursement resolution.
All right. Last month, we brought this to the board to have a look at it so we could ram it home tonight. And I think that's where we're at. And this is basically one piece of several that's missing in our upcoming Prop 1 the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, a possible interest-free loan for $350,000. And that will definitely come to the board before we actually do any commitments there. But this was one of the pieces of the package that's missing. The other one is the draft management policy directly following this item. And another item is our audit. I'll talk about that later, but which was recently completed, and budget projections, and staff will get those done behind the scenes and shipped off to, one second, please, to the state to get the next part of that process rolling. So in the packet, you'll have, I took the words draft off of the printed materials. So the reimbursement resolution is in there along with this debt management policy that requires 2 readings by the board. My mind is slipping if we had actually read that as the first policy at the special meeting. I believe we can adopt that this evening. But number 4 is absolutely prepared for adoption this evening. And if anybody has any questions, I'm here.
Thank you, Chris. Did anyone have any questions for Chris? And yes, thank you for the clarification items 4 and 5. We're hearing together. Seeing that there are no questions, I'll open it to the public. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this is items number 4 and 5 regarding reimbursement resolution 21.03 and receipt of new policy for debt management? I'm not seeing any hands from the public, so I will close the public comment and bring it back to the board for deliberation or motion.
So this is just for 4, or can we do them together?
I can do them together.
Right, so I will motion that we adopt reimbursement resolution 2021.03 and that we adopt the first reading of new policy 11.01 debt management policy.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. And for Chris, for clarification, do you think this is the second reading?
I'm looking at my packet from last month. I wanted to make sure that we did not do a first reading at a special meeting if it was unacceptable. That would be the ordinance. So this can be the second reading of the policy. This can be the adoption evening for that.
Okay, great. So for the maker of the motion to clarify the second reading as opposed to the first, if you're willing to make that clarification.
I'm sorry, I just totally spaced for a second.
Oh, sure. The motion that you made, we were talking about the first
Oh,
reading.
the second, yeah.
And it is the second reading. So I just wanted to see if you
So
were
we're adopting both of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If you're
yes.
comfortable with making that clear as the second reading, and if the seconder is also comfortable with that. Great, and I think we can move forward with taking a motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Aye for me, thank you. Motion passes unanimously 4-0. So our next item, number 6 on the agenda, is regarding changing the date for the meeting from the third Thursday to the third Tuesday. So I'll let Chris talk about that. This is item number 6.
I sound so much better muted. This is the item that you find in your packet is very transparent. You can't see it. It's magic. As you're aware, the board wants to move their regular meetings to Tuesday. That requires a bylaw change, which is an ordinance. So it takes a little bit more gymnastics politically, and I have to publish this as well. And we'll be getting a hold of one of our friendly neighbors to take care of that for us. So tonight will be the first reading of this ordinance, and there's a lot of process built into this, and we'll be dealing with it in November as well. But we only have to read it by the title tonight, and the full ordinance is included and will also be published after the November meeting. So that's the long and short of it. That's the only thing it really changes. So if anybody has any questions, I'm here.
Great, thank you. Did anyone have any questions on this item? Seeing none from the board, I'll go to public comment. If there's any members of the public who would like to speak, please raise your hand. And this is on changing the date of the meeting from the third Thursday to the third Tuesday of every month. Seeing none, I'll close the public comment period, bring it back to the board. So on this item, Chris, do you need one of us to read the title?
That is correct.
Okay.
And it would be the bolded items, the bolded text right after the number at the top here.
Great. Are there any members of the board who would like to do that?
I motion we adopt the ordinance, the board directors of the Manila Community Service District superseding ordinance number 9301 and designating the meeting place and time of the Manila Community Service District Board of Directors.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no, nay. Thank you. Motion passes unanimously 4-0. Thank you, everybody. Next item on the agenda, item number 7, is consideration of board support for an additional speed hump on Peninsula Drive. Go to you, Chris, for some more information.
I keep doing that. Okay. As you probably all are aware, if you've driven down Peninsula by the community center, Redwood Coast Montessori, there's a speed hump, and that was installed with a tremendous amount of help from the Peninsula Community Collaborative. And also my hat is off to Sequoia for getting that thing at the right height. He noticed immediately that didn't seem to be enough of a hump, but they went back and looked at the drawings, and then they sure enough, they didn't have enough stuff, and they added another $2,000 to it and got it to the right height. So the grand total is about $7,000 for installation of one of those. They normally put them about 600 feet apart, which would place one right around Orange Drive or closer to Pacific if we went the other way, which doesn't make a tremendous amount of sense. That being said, I wanted to just throw it out there that the board, we don't really have the authority just to throw $7,000 at a project like this, as it's a county road. So it would take what I'm asking for, and I think this public really supports adding this, is that the board allow district staff to move forward in spending some time and effort in getting some funds found for this, and then rolling forward and getting everything in place to have it actually installed.
Thank you, Chris. Do any board members have any questions for Chris on this item?
First of all, I was just going to say I'd be happy to help do some fundraising for something like that. I definitely support this idea. I'm curious about like they make just kind of plastic speed bumps that you can just kind of put across a road. I don't know if they're plastic or asphalt or what they are, but they're rubber or something. But and they seem to be used pretty effectively. I think they're like the kind of thing they have at the Arcata Marsh. I'm curious if there's legal issues with installing those, and because those seem like they'd be quite affordable and like maybe could be installed like every certain duration on the road.
It's just jumping out at me would be the collaborative went to a lot of fire departments and got their input on it. I think that we would absolutely want to at least check with Samoa Fire and Arcata Fire if they didn't have a problem with it. But otherwise, I think the county would want to sign off on it. It's a great idea, and I think it's a lot easier. But we definitely want to get the other jurisdictions involved to make sure we're not stomping on their toes with that.
Cool, because I actually would advocate for that at least. I know it seems not very necessary to have stuff north of the existing speed hump, but I do actually, what I see is people, they slow down, they go over that hump, they get up that hill, and then they race down it. And we do have people coming around the corner where I guess this is kind of a conflict of interest because I live here. I don't know if that's conflict of interest. It's safety of everyone, but I like the idea of speed control in Manila in general.
Thank you, Sequoia. Any other members of the board who'd like to comment on this item or have a question for Chris? Seeing none, I'll open it for public comment. If there are members of the public who'd like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. And Colleen Clifford, I'll go to you first.
Hi there. I live on Orange Drive with my husband and 2 kids, and we would be prime people who would be in support of this, and it would benefit us a lot. We walk and ride our bikes to school every day, and I'd say the majority of people driving on the road are considerate and slow down when they see us. But there are occasional people who just zoom right past us. It's kind of disconcerting. There's no shoulder through most of the road and no sidewalks. And as Sequoia was mentioning, north of the school also, there's some pretty blind curves that we walked on from our home all the way down to Willows and Dunes on Ranieri. And those were really dangerous areas because you never know who's going to zoom around those curves. So I support this idea. I'd love to see somebody do the research about where would be the best places, might be more than one place. And that's it. I just support the idea and looking into it. I appreciate you guys looking into this.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to Jennifer Savage.
Hi, thank you. Jennifer Savage. I live on Peninsula Drive, kind of in the middle, a little about a block south of the community center. So sort of a prime stretch of road for people to hit the gas if that's their inclination. And I've lived here for 19 years, raised 3 kids here. And like Colleen said, most people drive all right, but there's definitely a consistent problem with people going too fast. And it's been great having that speed hump down by the school to slow people down. But I'm not sure where exactly the best place to put it would be, but they do come off of that pretty quickly. And people come in off the south end of the highway onto Peninsula pretty hot a lot of times. And so speed humps and other traffic calming measures would just go a long way. There's so many people who walk their dogs and kids that bike to school and to play. And yeah, it's been a long need to have a little safer street. So just speaking in support of that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate your comments. And Carlson, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, thanks. We live across the street from the Peninsula School. I have 3 kids and 2 nieces, regularly walk across, back and forth across the road, and want to echo the sentiments that have already been shared. I appreciate Sequoia's contribution too of making sure the design is correct and such that it really does have an impact to control traffic flow. And in particular, that corner too, I guess Colleen already said it too, is a blind corner, and that could probably use some traffic control too. So there is a need to slow traffic. We see folks that are driving way too fast, even when you are walking, and when you're not walking, they're driving even faster. So I'm all support of it. The staff report provided by the Department of Public Works had some requirements that seemed to suggest that modifications to the roadway there, including this road hump, would have to go all the way to the Board of Supervisors. So I'm wondering if that's been identified to be applicable in this situation. I would assume so, but I don't really know. But anyway, we're in support. Really like the idea. Thanks for pursuing it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for your comments. Are there any other public members who would like to comment on the speed hump item? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment and bring it back to the board for discussion or to make a motion. Were there any additional questions for Chris? Or Chris, were there items from the public comment to address where I also saw that about the Board of Supervisors? Are you familiar with the process?
I think that there was some involvement with the Board of Soups there. I would have to look back on what the collaborative had to go through to get this completed, and they did a tremendous amount of work, and in advance of this agenda item provided all of that work to me. So I have it in my folder should we move forward, but the specifics of that I'm not 100% sure.
I'm just curious if there's any like stipulations in terms of how the money would need to be raised. Could it just be private donations? Does it really matter where the money comes from?
No, I don't think it matters where it comes from, so long as it doesn't come out of your water and sewer rates. And in fact, I think it begs the question that I should get an opinion on whether we could actually just write a check and get it done for the same amount, roughly, say that the collaborative was able to get it done. So I think I'll actually ask our attorney that question briefly and just see what he says about it. It might be an issue. I presume it is an issue, but I didn't ask yet. So if you guys want to act on this item this evening, I'll actually find out if we can just pay for it, and then I'll have a different item to bring to the board about spending some money on it. And it would be about 7,000, like I said.
Yeah, I would imagine that a lot of residents would be happy to pool their resources and contribute towards that. And I see that as maybe at least would be reasonable for the residents that live on this stretch of road to partially fund it, because if it's coming from district funds and it's benefiting mostly people in this area, then to me that wouldn't be quite as fair. But like I would, I know that I personally, and I think some of my neighbors would be happy to contribute towards something like that. So I think we can come up with those funds one way or another.
Thank you, Sequoia. It seems to me that the direction that is needed for the board is to encourage to direct Chris to spend some more time on this item if the board sees fit. Before we move forward with the motion, I have closed public comment, Dendra. I will open it. I maybe even having some technical issues getting through. And so go ahead, please, with your comments.
Okay, I have several comments. First of all, does anybody know whether this is because of traffic going to the school? Because when the school was going to rent, they said that they were going to encourage parents to, use buses and stuff like that, so there wouldn't be so much traffic. And I know residents on the southern end of the peninsula have complained about people coming off the highway and just flooring it and then speeding down the road from the south end. And my other question, I have a couple of questions. Who would be the applicant for this project? And who requested it to be on the agenda? And the exact cost of speed hump. And there is a cost of installing a street light, which must be in place first, according to what I read. And who would be responsible for paying that PG&E bill every month? And there would have to be a meeting before the County Board of Supervisors, according to what I read. And then I was going to ask what account it would be paid for. And that I didn't think the district had street lighting or street powers other than the district's property on Lupin Avenue. And that they can, I guess, do some kind of street repairs when they're doing water and sewer repairs. So those are my questions and comments. I'm not opposed to it. I just don't want it near Pacific, because any more there is like setting up a death trap for when people come off that highway and come around that corner and you have cars on your rear end because I live right near there. And so it's a very dangerous intersection where it crosses the highway there. So I would not like to see it at the end near Beach or Ranieri or Pacific there. So that's my comment. And you might question the residents where Colleen lives, because I know they really were complaining right after the school, a year after they moved in, they were complaining about all the speeding. So.
Thank you, Dendra. We've got 30 seconds left. Do you have anything else?
Who's going to be the applicant on the application?
Yeah, I think I'll bring it back to Chris once I get the public comment closed, but we will get some more information for you. Thank you for your comments. With that, I'll close the public comment, bring it back to the board. And Chris, if there are items that you're able to answer that Dendra was asking, that'd be great.
Sure. Who asked for this? A resident asked for that. Who would be the applicant? It would probably be us. I don't know about a PG&E light. That very well could be true. And I'm not sure about the Board of Soups. That could also very well be true. I think if the board moves forward with this, again, what I'll do is find out the legalities of us being able to pay for it. I think one of the questions was, is it 7,000? I think that's about what it was. I think that I'll also look into what a plastic hump or some kind of a temporary one that could maybe cost a lot less be, and just the implications of us tooling around in the county road, generally speaking, and put an item up for November to update the board on this.
Great, thank you. And I think that was the direction that Chris was looking for from the board this evening, was just to direct him to spend more time on this item and bring it back to the board once some more questions are answered on how we go about getting this done, or what the process would look like, community effort or otherwise. But I am support and having Chris spend some time looking into this and bringing it back. We've received a number of letters from the public that I wanted to acknowledge those, and thank you very much for everyone who sent them in. And they're all positive and really looking for this to come forward for the community. So I think it'd be well worth of some extra time to see what we can do to assist. And do you need a motion on that? We could take a motion. All those in favor of directing Chris to spend some more time on the speed hum issue and bring it back to us in November. I'll make the motion.
Second.
Great, thanks. And all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Passes unanimously 4-0. Thank you, everybody. And let me go back up to the top of the agenda here. With that, we have the consent calendar. Items can be pulled from the consent calendar if there's discussion needed from board members or members of the public. If there is no discussion that's from board or the public, consent items can be approved in one motion. So we have one item on consent that's approved the draft minutes from September 7th, 2021 special meeting. Was there anyone who had any comments on this? And were there any public members who had any comments on this item? Seeing none, I think we can move forward with the consent calendar. And so I would take a motion to approve the consent calendar with the draft minutes.
A motion to approve the consent calendar with the draft minutes.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. We had a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, everybody. And with that, so that concludes our action items for this evening. Next on the agenda, number 9 and 10. Number 9 is the director committee reports. And I think, Chris, you did say you had a report out from the last REDAC meeting.
Yeah, I'll be really brief. I attended my first REDAC meeting in lieu of Danielle Munice's presence. And basically it was kind of a strange thing. What they talked about was the Samoa Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District that's coming to town. And I'm a public member on that committee. So I can kind of talk about that in two capacities, but that's coming. And it has really nothing to do with Manila at this time. And it's essentially, I really would rather have staff from county discuss that, or the Economic Development Department detail that, but essentially it's kind of like redevelopment with a different shirt on. It's a little different process there, and there's different projects. And that's going to be something perhaps they can make a presentation with our board later. And that's the committee angle on that. Should I stop there, Meg? Do you want me to jump right into my staff report?
Yeah, if that concludes your committee report, I appreciate you attending the meeting and getting back to us. Typically we would have a staff person go, but Chris was going there in another capacity. So he covered our alternative for last month, but that's why we have that on the agenda today. So thank you, Chris. I really appreciate your effort and your time going to the meeting last month.
Nope, no problem.
And happy to jump right into number 10.
Yeah, I'll try to wrap it up. I'm very surprised we have 15 minutes left, and I won't take all of them. There's a lot going on, and I really appreciate the board doing all this lifting tonight and getting some of these big things out of the way for an awesome opportunity that we're going to have coming up with our water grant. That being said, there's a pending deadline coming at us very quickly for our per capita park grant. It's for 178,000. We're essentially already approved for this, and there's an application on my desk that's almost finished. And so I'm going to bring an item in November's meeting that's going to be projects that the board essentially signs off on that we can throw into this, because the bigger park grant, they haven't made an award yet. And they said it's going to be fall, and here we are. There's no award. We would like to get some just some board buy-in to cover our ass while we move forward in getting that application to the state. And that's due January 31st. So that's going to be a blink of an eye if we miss something. And with the help of Brett, our awesome consultant engineer, we did get approved for the drainage grant, as we spoke of at the last meeting and before. So that's over $2 million coming to the district to get that going. And I'm sure we'll have a lot more detail in the coming months on how to implement going out for bid on that and getting construction going on that. So I'll pull back on that one a little bit for that. Our audit is finished. Our CPA came and spent a few days with us earlier in the month and knocked that out. And we are extremely happy with the performance of the district, especially due to COVID. But there's some findings on some process issues that we expected, and there'll probably be some policy coming to the new year we'd like to change as far as banking, financial policy issues like that. So nothing major, no one's going to prison. Yeah, let's see if the fiber optic line is installed. We are really looking forward to getting new meters. We'd like to replace all the meters in the entire system with radio meters or even cellular read back meters. A new system to save a lot of time now that we are tiny little staff to spend too much going out into the field. I'll bring that in a more comprehensive manner to the board later, where I could discuss the drawbacks of other agencies have with doing radio meters, things like that. Our trail for the 255 bike trail, non-motorized trail was approved. It was cut in half due to Public Works at the county level wanting to kind of not have to deal with an appeal that was threatened. I believe there's also an appeal that was planned by some residents to go the other way and have us get the whole trail installed. And I don't know what the success or not has been on that field, but we are approved to get the rest of that, at least the first segment of that, actually completed. And we're excited. And lastly, our MSR, which is not lastly, but our municipal service review is a document that LAFCO produces that describes our agency and our sphere of influence. And we have some updates coming for that. That'll probably be in January, excuse me, or February, that you'll see that, and I can expand on what that really means. And lastly, Alicia has organized a barbecue for is it the 30th, and invites everybody to come in costume or not. And you can dress as a board member, and I'll dress as a manager, and have some hot dogs and meet everybody standing up, and we can breathe on each other and meet face to face finally. That concludes my report.
Great, thank you very much. Any board members have any questions on any of the items in the report?
When's this meeting that you're just talking about? What time?
You mean the barbecue meeting? That's going to be Saturday the 30th.
At what time though?
Oh, I'm sorry, 3 o'clock.
And that's at the community center, or?
Oh man, I'm not doing good at all on this item. I should get the flyer out. It's at the district office. We're going to do it in the yard. It's something that Alicia's been around. She works for the district, and her grandfather did this. She can jump in and correct me because I'm butchering this. It was something they did over the years, and the district wants to get back into doing things like that and having some events and reach out to the community on a softer level like that. And this is a thing that Alicia organized and wants to do it, and we're going to charge forward and see how successful it is. Meet everybody, hopefully.
Great, thank you. And I would, I think, there may be some requirements if there's more than 2 of us together at one time, that it has to be a notice public meeting. And so I would just urge caution on how we approach that.
Yeah, if I could chime in a little bit on that. Sure. There's nothing stopping us from having a ceremonial gathering so long as we don't discuss business, which is impossible. So I think that we would make an agenda for this as a special meeting and make it kind of corny and spooky and happy and fun, but it will actually be a Brown Act meeting, and you guys will obviously be paid for it. And if you wanted to waive that fee, we could buy more hot dogs or something like that. But we can address that when it comes to it. And I'll absolutely actually post an agenda for this, and I'll pass it by you guys and see how you feel about it.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Make sure we're complying with the Brown Act. I appreciate it. I see that Dender has her hand up, so I will open this report and see if there are any questions or comments from the public. Go ahead, Dendra.
Okay, 3 bullet points up from the bottom of the page. It says staff is planning to prepare a grant application from the Recreation Trails Program. So what grant? What grant and what trail?
Oh, thanks for pointing that out. It's a funding opportunity for improving a trail, and we were considering the park. It's really in its very early stages, so I didn't want to expand on it too much because I don't know enough about it. But we are planning on sticking our finger in there just to see if we can get something going. And if it gets any to the next point where we bring it to the board, we would do just that. The deadline's pretty far off on that, but I just wanted to bring it up that there's some funding opportunities coming our way. We'd like to keep our eye on them.
Okay.
Thank you. Did you have any additional comments?
I still think that the board should look at an ad hoc committee or a standing committee with the residents to provide input on different priorities, and as far as, you know, outreach to the community. Because I don't think, this is off the subject, but since he talked about kind of in here, the park grant, when they did the survey, there was no outreach that I saw in the statistics, that little statistics that were given to us for outreach to softballs players, soccer, or any kind of little leagues or senior leagues. And I know somebody from the senior leagues had come to the district and asked about our field getting fixed. And, you know, there was outreach to the roller derby and stuff like that, who don't really use our area. So, you know, it just seems skewed, like the statistics. And then the other thing is, I have seen no statistics. There was only one comment, and I tried to raise my hand before, but there was only one comment. Through that whole, all of their paperwork, there was only one section that they said residents complained about the campground. And I was at that meeting. There were 5 people there, the general manager, John Woolley, myself, and 2 other community members who live on Manila Avenue. The people that lived on Manila Avenue were complaining about overnight parking and people camping out in their cars on Manila Ave. They weren't complaining about the RV campground. There were only 2 people that complained about the RV campground. So I want to see the statistics that say that, because there are none. You know, there's no real statistics with all this that's been done. The community outreach, there's no numbers as far as prioritizing what gets put in. And mostly the dog park was talked about being right at the front of the park, not over an RV campsite. So that's my.
Thank you. Did you have any additional comments?
No, just that you could put an item on the agenda for next month about doing an ad hoc or a standing committee or a commission like there used to be.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate your comments. With that, I'll close the public comment, and I think that and bring it back to the board to see if there was a direction the board wanted to provide for a future item to Chris. I think that maybe taking a comprehensive view at what is happening at the park, like we have these moving pieces with what, we did decide to move forward with FARA in some sense this evening, but with the contract for that would need to be, perhaps could come back in front of us to take a look at in terms of scale and scope and what we are agreeing to. And then also too, I think it could be, and that could be its own standalone item perhaps. And then another item could just be the state of affairs of the park. We have, these past things that have, we've had these surveys and different things go on in the past. So maybe just a refresher of what those look like, what are the numbers? Where are we at today? What are we doing there today? What could it look like? Including maybe some more information on the recreation trails program. So I think that may be good to bring back, and could be December. I know we have a number of items that we're bringing back for next month. So depending on, at least in my opinion, it could be December, Chris, depending on how much we, can get together for the next meeting.
Yeah, if you don't mind me jumping in, I think that we will absolutely have an agenda item related to the per capita grant, unless we get an award notice between now and the next meeting, because the deadline for that grant is December 31st. So I will bring back all the data that I can get, just so everybody knows the very unscientific way that we went about getting that visioning from RCAA was very qualitative. And I don't know if there's any quantitative information in it at all, but I'll look back through all the material that was filled out online. So it's hard to kind of pull it back and retrieve it, but I have a lot more information, and I'll bring that to November. And I'll briefly review the November agenda. So far is going to be the audit, and we're going to have a financial update, the ordinance that we did a first reading tonight, some speed hump work, the per capita project, obviously, and an RV contract draft with FARA perhaps, and however we can get that to the next step. Dendra mentioned the Parks and Rec committee or commission, and I think that that's going to grow legs in a different way, and perhaps an ad hoc committee, which is 2 members of the board or less, to help staff push through this grant app that's pending. So I think we'll have a pretty full agenda in November as well, but we did really well tonight with 4 minutes to spare. I'm excited.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, great. Yeah, that sounds very good. Thank you for coordinating those efforts on behalf of the district. Did anyone else have any other items or comments or questions for Chris tonight? If not, move to adjourn the meeting at 8:27 p.m. So thank you everybody for your participation this evening, and look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.